What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I have hosted and produced over 2,000 epic conversations over the last 10 years. And what makes our conversations epic? We don't do interviews. We do conversations. Hey, everybody. It's Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, and also men's empowerment coach. We had a little bit of a technical challenge, so we got delayed for about 20 minutes, but I am blessed and highly favored that our guest has said, I got all night. So he gave me space, which is much appreciated. So let's get to it. Stewart Thompson, he is a great representative of an organization called the Gatehouse in Toronto. He joined there 5 years ago as a participant, and now a year later, he is one of the main people there. And he is going to be sharing with us tonight his story of being sexually abused when he was younger, some of the challenges that he had to go through, and how he's overcome that. So, Stewart, first of all, thanks for your patience and waiting, and thanks for being here.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me back. This is fantastic. I love doing this because, especially video now, because I'm able to talk about this at a much greater level, and people could see who I am. Never mind just doing through audio cast or audio podcast. And this is great that people can see where I'm coming from. Like, you can see my eyes, you can see my face, and put a face of obviously to the voice. So when I talk, people can see, get a better feel from who I am and where I'm coming from. So to me, this is very, very important, and I'm grateful to be here today. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well, right back at you. And as I was sharing when we first started, that Stewart and I are both based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And one of the nice things is I've actually had a chance to meet Stewart. So we've actually physically met each other. So it's not a digital relationship. We've actually met each other, and we encourage and support each other wherever and however we can. So, Stewart, let's get right into your story. I don't want to hold back. We got a little bit delayed, but I know that you're passionate about it, so the microphone is yours. So go for it, my man.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Vibe. And whoever's tuning in, I'm grateful that you're tuning in to hear my story somewhat, and also what my role here at the Gatehouse is, and to even talk about the Gatehouse to me is a big thing, because it basically saved my life from basically I was basically at the bottom of the bottom. And I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and then I'll talk about the Gatehouse. Basically, I came here 5 years ago. I came here as a participant, and 5 years ago, before I came here, I was pretty much on my path to so-called freedom was certainly not there, because I basically looked out of a sewer at the rest of the world, and that's where I was coming from. Everything I was dealing everything from addictions to bad relationships. In fact, I know before I came here, I was in a really good intimate relationship with somebody, and I chose to walk away. And the reason why I chose to walk away was because I never thought I was worthy of this person. It's a perfectly beautiful person, and I swear I'll probably think about it to the day I die, but that's all right. I'm here now, and I'm in a good place, and I've come a long way to where I was thinking before, especially when it comes to all those false beliefs I had towards myself, to which brings me here today. But my story to what brought me to the Gatehouse, basically, prior to what I just told you, with my relationship and where I was at, was I started being abused from the age of between 6 and 7, and it carried on until I was to the age of around 12, 13. And when that happened, basically, I guess pretty much right from the day that happened, that basically my life turned upside down. And I remember from the first time that it happened to me, and I won't be too descriptive or too descriptive about how it happened, but I do know that I will say this much. The first time I was abused, I remember I was taken down into a basement of this apartment I was living in. This is, by the way, I'm not afraid to say it either. I was living in Ottawa at that time. And for those international listeners that are out there, basically Ottawa's the capital of Canada. I won't get into geography, history sort of thing here, but anyway, Ottawa's east of Toronto. And at that time, this is back in the 60s, I remember being taken downstairs, and I was violated by a friend of the family. And also be very, very clear that I was never violated by any member of my family. It was always friends of the family, or so-called friends of the family, and it was both between men and one woman, and that's basically where it started. But anyway, for the first time I was taken down, that's basically when my life, I thought, was basically, that just stopped me from being a child, turned me into an instant 40-year-old or 50-year-old. I'm in my mid-50s now, but basically it turned me up, put up a big wall, and what I knew life as a child was basically, it was gone. And I remember being a child that age, and I remember after that happened to me, life was never the same after that. I remember going to school and feeling like I didn't belong. I felt out of place. I felt dirty. I felt disgusting. I didn't even understand why. But those are the things at that time I was feeling. And at the same time, man, it made me very, very, well, you know, remember the movie Damien? Well, that's kind of like what I turned into. Basically, I was not good in school. I couldn't pay attention. I was so distracted. I mean, as a child, well, obviously I wouldn't understand why, other than the obvious, which I'm talking about. But basically, it basically isolated. I basically isolated myself, put up this big wall, and this so-called 6-year-old kid was no longer a 6-year-old kid. It made me grow up real, real, real fast, and it made me think about things I shouldn't have even thinking about as a child, when I should have been thinking about just going to play hockey or going to play ball, going to the park. All those things, gone. Basically gone.
So Stewart,
yeah.
So let me just interrupt, and sorry for interrupting here. The abuse did not happen with family members, but did family members ever suspect what was going on?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, I think maybe they might have, like later on, like when I was about maybe 8 or 9 or something like that, but I don't think so right from the beginning. I really don't think so. I think they were just blind to it. I know that my father and his second wife, my father was very busy with his own business and is doing his own thing, so I rarely ever saw him. And even my stepmother, I didn't see them too often either, but whenever we did connect, it was usually, they had no idea. They didn't. And I was too scared to, because my very first perpetrator, basically told me that if I said anything, that he'd hurt me. And to what level, I don't remember exactly, probably because I blocked it for so many years. And, yes, I knew this person did it, and I knew that, I was always aware that he was around. And I know that even as a child, from the time that I started, he'd come out of nowhere and he'd just grab me and then go and take me and violate me. And that went on for many, many years, the same person. And then it happened also from a woman as well. And that made me very confused as well, because I guess it would have been, I probably was around I was between the ages of 7 and 8 when it happened to me as a woman. And I remember there was a couple other people there. I got to keep names out of this, because not only has not gone through the court system, but it also, I don't want people coming back and saying whatever, or I don't want to be sued either, obviously, for not proving it in court. But the one woman that violated me from that age, again, that's another thing that still resonates very much in my mind. And that same woman that violated me that age actually took my virginity at the same time too. So there's an even bigger twist to what I'm talking about here. But as far as being able to talk to anybody about it, no, I don't think so. No, not at all. And even to this day, I kind of think about that now, and I've had this asked to me, well, you know what? When you're a child and you're that innocent, really, at that time, the way I grew up in my era when I grew up, I would have either been, I would have been disciplined. I could have been, I would have been told basically to shut up about it because it was taboo. I mean, it still is pretty taboo for the most part, but not like it was back in the early 60s and into the 70s. And I just couldn't say anything about it. I was really scared because, like I say, my first perpetrator, he basically warned me that if I said anything, that he would hurt me. And I basically, as a child, well, what am I going to do? I'm gonna keep my mouth shut, and that's exactly what I did.
Well, okay, so you kept your mouth shut. How long did you keep your mouth shut for? Like, did any time during your young years, did you share with anybody, or were you still too afraid? Was there shame? There was because I'm really feeling it for you here, because you're being violated. You can't share it with anyone. You can't, well, your parent, like, I think the first time we were on the show together, you had mentioned that you spent some time living with your grandparents.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that was after the fact, which I'm going to get into. But yeah, I just, with just like you said though, the shame and the guilt. But never mind that, I was just plain terrified as a child that this person in particular would come back and hurt me, and you know, his sense of grooming was very powerful. I mean, I'm just a little kid, and he's probably 150, 200 pounds heavier than I am. So right. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? And to your question, if I mentioned it, and I remember one time, actually, I remember it quite clearly. I remember my stepmother coming, not my stepmother, but my mother coming to visit me, because my mother, she lived in another province, and with the type of work she was doing, she traveled all around, all across Canada, back and forth all the time, and it's which I had the opportunity of doing with her from time to time. But I remember mentioning to her at one point that that something had happened to me, and I think she was more shocked than I was, the fact that something had happened to me, and I think that she really didn't know how to deal with it. So the way I think about it now, it was probably just swept under the carpet. So that's basically where that laid. It didn't go anywhere. I mean, and also in that era too, like I've stated already, it was taboo, and most people didn't talk about it. I mean, hell. In the U.S. or in Canada, rape wasn't really even recognized until the middle 70s when they started opening up these rape crisis centers for women, and men were not included in this. And you know, that's come a long way too as well. And again, that's another topic. But that time there was nothing. I mean, there was nothing for men, and there was nothing for kids. There was no place to go vent, and I just didn't know who to talk to. I was just plain scared kid, I guess is the simplest way to put it, right?
Understood. So you spent this time living with your parents, then you transition living with your grandparents, yes. Correct?
Yeah, and
what was the reason for the change from living with your parents to living with your grandparents?
Well, what happened there was my father and his wife to be at the time, well, they split up. So, and at that time, well, I had a younger brother as well, which I'm going to get into as well. But and plus, I had I had a half sister and another stepsister. So basically, since my younger brother and I were from my father's first marriage, well, we went off with him, and my father didn't have a place to keep us, or couldn't look after us because of his own things he was doing. So he shipped us off to his parents' place, and that's where I went after that.
And how was that experience?
Well, again, it's felt like, again, I fell pretty much into the same role again. I went out there, it was fine. I was fine for probably, I don't know, maybe 4 months, 6 months, and then I went to go visit my grandparents were farmers, so that's one great experience, at least I can think about, remember, that's for sure. But they were farmers, and a lot of times what we do, living in a small community where I lived, was everybody knew everybody. So from time to time, we'd go out and just visit people, and that's what I would do. If I was bored, I had nothing to do at home. I was young. I didn't have any real responsibilities since I was too small to do a lot of the work around the farm. Some of the work I would do, but a lot of it I couldn't do. It wasn't until I got a little bit older in life that I was able to start doing it. But so anyway, again, when I moved out there, my abuse started again, and it was with another gentleman. I shouldn't have even called him a gentleman, but with another man, I should say. And again, this one was a little bit different because this was a little bit more violent, because this person in particular had a tendency to, how he controlled me by not saying anything was he basically hit me or punched me, and that was his way of controlling me. So if I didn't shut up, if I said anything, if I opened my mouth, basically he warned me I was dead meat, and I'm still quoting his words to this day. And this guy I'm talking about is dead now, long dead, after many years. And I don't think about it too much because it was just nasty all around. But yes, and yeah, he had rather a profound effect on me, again, like the first one, and where his way of controlling me was by hitting me to make sure that I got it. The first person that did it to me never did that. He never hit me. All he did was words, and the words were powerful enough. Not only that, because of his size as well. and of course being a child, of course. But the second person that violated me, and he did quite well, more often than I care to mention, but more than once and more than a few times over a period of a few years, to which really messed me up to a great degree. And I even to this day I can't believe that I'm even here talking about it today. And then on the other hand, from other people that I've met, been through the same experience, well, similar experiences, I should say. I bow to them as well, that they're equally as brave to the fact that they've even come forward and even talk about it to the level that they have. But
wow. So after that situation, living with your grandparents, how long were you living there, and how long did that event of abuse last for?
Well, it lasted, and may I add, there was a couple more times in there as well that it happened as well from other people as well. I was there till the age of about 11, and then I moved out to the East Coast with my mother. And lo and behold, that happened there again as well. Like I say, it's kind of like I told my story. I gave my story to a person actually. Actually, this book right here. I'm just going to show you. And in this book, Unlock the Door Beyond Sexual Abuse. And in that story, I basically felt like I had a sign on my forehead saying, "Come and take me. I'm yours." And that's kind of how I felt as a child when I went out to the East Coast. It's going to happen there again. And a lot of people will think, well, why didn't you say something? Well, I didn't. I mean, you had to be in the time to understand what I'm talking about. Back in the 70s, no, this topic just wasn't talked about. And I never heard about it, and I was too scared. And you know what? If you listen to other survivors that have been through this experience, they'll tell you very similar experience. And it doesn't have to be, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be someone of my age or even necessarily younger. I mean, if a person violates you and threatens you when you're and you're an adolescent or a child, well, you're not going to say anything. Well, I mean, if you are, you're a pretty brave child. Well, I sure as hell wasn't very brave at that time. I would think I was more. If I was brave, it was only because I took the abuse and didn't say a damn thing about it. And that's, if I'm brave, that's where I was brave. That's it. As far as being able to talk about it, impossible. No way. And I've talked to many other people from my same age, and they feel the same way.
So after the grandparents, where did you land next? That's
when I went to the East Coast to live with my mother.
Okay. And how long was that experience?
Well, that experience didn't last very long.
I don't mean it in a positive way. I'm just saying, word,
just over experience. A year, and then I ended up coming back because the way I looked at it, because what made me decide to come back to Ontario was the fact that, okay, well, why is it that everywhere I go, this is happening to me? I just don't understand it. It's kind of like the statement I just said about, having a sign on my forehead here, "Come and take me." Like, really, that's what I felt. So I came back to Ontario, and I was fed up, and I was looking for a change in my life, trying to change something so that I didn't have to deal with this. But it's just, why is it every time I turn around the corner, this is happening to me? But at that time, obviously, I never figured it out. It wasn't until much later on in life, not that I've really figured it out, but was able to deal with it and just understand the fact that I was just a child. And that's simple. And I just, at that time, I think child abuse was pretty, well, forgive my choice of words, but it was pretty abundant to the point where society turned pretty much a blind eye to it. And even today, to a certain degree, depending on what culture you come from, it's very much, people turn a blind eye and they just basically don't pay attention to it. But they realize the effects it has after the fact. What about those children? Why, this could spill into a whole new conversation, but the after effects of what happens to that child, whether you're female or male, it makes no difference. People don't understand what happens to that individual when that happens. Like when you have no self-worth, you feel you're not worthy of anybody, and you're grieving, you don't even understand why. You're angry, you don't even understand why. You carry all these anxieties, you don't even like, what the hell? Like, what are these for? How did I incorporate this? I wasn't brought up this way. My values do not match my attitude. So what's going on here? So
Absolutely.
so
So after leave, what was your next step after the East Coast? Because from where I'm getting chronology, you were getting to be older.
yes, and then that's when I came back to Ontario. I was there just a little over a year.
Yep.
And then I came back to Ontario, and I realized that I couldn't stay here either, because it's like the abuse followed me. Is basically my point I was getting at.
So what did you do, man?
Well, I just came back to Ontario, and I coped. Well, first off, from a very young age, I started drinking and smoking dope, and I remember the first time I smoked it. I was living in the East Coast, and wow, I had pain. I don't even know why I had pain to begin with, but that was my way of coping. Ontario, and again, but I was really happy when I came back. So the person that started violating me when I moved out to the town that I moved at, he was dead at that time. So, but I still had another thing that happened to me when I came back, and to this moment. Again, it's none of these things. It's kind of makes me wonder why it happened and that. But although even though I've said this, I can say, well, I don't really spend much time thinking about it. All I know is that it happened to me, and I choose to. My path now is to move forward, not to stay in the past and think about it. But it's still very important, because the same woman that violated me at where I got violated by the man the first time, the same place I was living at when I was living in Ottawa. This same woman, I can't believe I came across paths with her again, her and her husband. And
come on.
And when I first came back to Ontario, and for some reason they moved to the same area where I was living at, where my grandparents were at, and I came across them, and for some reason I ended up going over to their place, and it started all over again. And then by the time I was the age of probably 15 going on 16, well, of course, with all this abuse that happened to me, one of the things that us survivors go through, one of these things we have to deal with, which we're really confused about, is our sexuality. And that was one of my things I was very confused about. But my point I was trying to get at is that by the time I guess I was 15 going on 16, the same woman that violated me from that age of 7, 8 years of age, she took my virginity. So that really messed me up. Talk about a big nasty bowl of soup I'm talking about here. Just a bad mix of everything. And that made me more confused than ever when that happened to me. I remember talking about it with a friend of mine at that age that this lady, well, she took my virginity, and for some reason he thought that was just the cat's meow for sure. And wow, you had your first experience by an older woman, but little did he realize that this woman that took my virginity was also a woman that violated me from a very young age, and I'm still carrying the remnants of that. So it's funny how, or rather, it's not even funny. It's just rather crazy how all these things sort of turned around and basically ended all up where it ended up, and brought me to basically, after that happened. Again, that made my life more confusing than ever, because here I am. Not only am I confused about my sexuality, I'm confused about love. I'm confused about my identity. I'm confused about my self-worth. Why am I angry? I mean, I have all these things going around. I'm still a kid. I'm a young teenager. I was screwed up as a child, as an adolescent. Now here I am I'm a teenager, and I really don't know what to think of myself, or who I am, or where I'm going, or anything like that. I mean, totally distracted me from school. It distracted me from many, many, many things, and made my life basically, it wasn't very nice, to put it that way. No direction, not being able to concentrate in school. I had to move out west to Saskatchewan just to finish my schooling, because I was too distracted here in Ontario from what happened to me. Granted, I finished my schooling out west, and I went on to college and did some university as well, but that still didn't justify the means of what happened to me and what I became and what I thought. I escaped and go west to escape my abuse that occurred to me and to try to find a better life, to try to rediscover myself, which really in reality, yes, I went out there and yes, I accomplished my schooling, but at the same time, it didn't help me with my identity to who I am and to what I was becoming. And it basically, yes, it was great. I finished my schooling, but that didn't solve my problem. If anything, I would finish that, and it just basically led into petty crime, and sorry about that, and petty crime, and more drugs, alcohol, stupid sex, if I want to call it that. Just no quality of life whatsoever, none whatsoever. What I call a quality of life anyway, and I don't know about anybody else, but what I call a quality of life certainly was not there, because I was so self-destructive. All I wanted to do was party and numb myself, and I didn't trust anybody. So that's basically how I ran my life. I mean, even when I came back from Ontario, or rather from Saskatchewan to Ontario, when I came back here, I was basically, prior to coming back here, I was living on the streets. Another example of my self-destruction I choose to follow. From the way I was feeling and not understanding why I was feeling. And I know my first stint living on the streets was living in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I remember I lived on the streets there for probably almost a year and a half, almost 2 years, because of not having any self-worth, and I didn't want to be around anybody. Well, if I did, it was always people that were a bad influence, or definitely not good role models or to follow. But basically I felt my life wasn't worth much, so I figured, well, if I'm going to go out there, well, I'll live on the street. I just figured that's what I deserved. I figured I was just a low-class citizen, or just a dog. So that's how I would basically conduct myself, and how people always told me I was a nice person, but I never believed that for a minute, because I always felt to myself that if I let all this happen to me, I must be a pretty bad person if people want to do that to me. And I don't even understand why, but I always thought I was a bad person, because all people wanted to do was abuse me, like from a young age. Well, even when I could fight back, I had some experiences, nevertheless. I don't know whether it's because of my size or this energy I gave off. To this day, I have no idea. Maybe people saw that when I was a child, that I was vulnerable because I was from a broken family, and I don't know what. I have no idea. And to be honest with you, I really haven't spent a whole lot of time trying to figure out why people did that to me, other than the fact that they've done it to me. And to me, there's no reason for it whatsoever. Why would you do that to a child? That part I don't get, and I don't think I ever will get that part. I just can't get. I cannot put my mind into someone who thinks like that. I just can't do it. It's just not in my vocabulary or in my mindset in any way or form. But
okay, Stewart,
I've talked about this lots of times to many different levels, and for me to sit here and talk like I am right now is huge, very, very huge. And not only that, but doing it audio, or doing an audio cast or radio broadcast is one thing, but doing it live is another thing. I've given my story in the book I talked about. I've given my story many times now, and yes, I've been very clear. I don't carry any guilt or shame anymore, because it wasn't my fault. But I have lots of reason to carry guilt and shame for all the things I've done after the fact. But nevertheless, I refuse to carry that as well. I'd rather sit here and talk to you, wherever you may be in the world, that children don't have to go through this. They don't deserve this, at all. And depending where you live, there is help out there for people who don't know how to deal with this. I mean, for example, I live in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I'm lucky I have the gatehouse here that saved my butt. But depending where you live, well, you may not have that kind of help. I mean, thank God for multimedia now. You can go on. There's chat lines, like for example, like on Twitter and on Facebook. I know there's certain. You can go to private pages where you can go on chat lines and you can get support, because you could live someplace, like, for example, well, here in Canada, if you lived up north, like you're 2 hours north, well, there's going to be nothing there for you. There's not even going to be, there's not going to be any kind of therapist there for you. You might be lucky to find a psychologist or a psychiatrist or even a therapist, but really, do they understand what you're going through? Well, you know, and don't get me wrong, there is people out there that do understand, but just to find somebody is my point, that will help you and understand what you're going through to the level that makes you, you know, like, there's so much stuff going on there. And I think this is where a lot of people don't understand, is that when you're violated, it really, really messes you up. And I don't think people get that. I mean, if you look at statistics just here in Canada, never mind the U.S., for example, you look at all the people that are in jail. Now, I'm not talking about pedophiles. I'm talking about people just doing crimes, like whether you know,
Okay, everybody. Well, I'm going to stay on. Stewart just cut off, so I hope he comes back on. I tried to get in contact with him. Oh, here he comes back. Let's see if we can get him full force now. Let's see if he comes on properly.
There we go.
Stewart, can you hear me?
I hear you fine. I lost you there for a second.
Well, you know what? For the last 15, 20 minutes, we couldn't see you.
Oh, wow.
But we could hear you, and I was trying to text you and phone you to say to refresh your screen.
Oh, shoot. I wasn't even paying attention.
So you were focused on your story, but no problem, because what you shared was of value. So all this, if I get a chance to ask a conversation piece with you, and I got to shout out to some people while we're Musicalia2355. Thank you for the shout out. At @4u_Nico. Thank you so much for dropping by. Also, a streaming voice, a preacher's kid. Thanks everyone for dealing and hanging in during the technical issues. And I also have a very special friend who I'm not going to say who's watching too. So, like, say thank you so much, Michael. Okay, I can refer to you as Michael Musica Leo. Thank you so much.
Hey, Michael. I know Michael.
Okay, what kept you going during these young years of your life?
That is a really good question. What kept me going? I don't know. That's I've sometimes somebody's asked me that before, and I really don't know. Maybe just wanting to. I don't know. I really can't answer that. I don't know what kept me going. I was so confused with what I was dealing with, as far as logic was concerned in regards to how I was to conduct my life. I really don't know. I just don't know. I have to think about that exponentially quite a bit to really to think why I kept going. I have no idea. I just have no idea. Maybe a little bit of hope, I guess, would be a good answer in the back of my mind someplace.
Okay. And I want you also to share how your experiences as a young boy affected your married life.
Oh, that is a good question, which I can answer very, 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 very much so. Well, how that affected me when I was married was to the point that, yes, I was very much in love with this woman that I had a child with, and the only problem was, yes, I was in love with this woman. The only trouble was I did not know how to deal with the emotion very well. And what I mean by that was that, like, for example, like if we had a disagreement, for example, yes, couples fight, they quarrel. I quarrel. I totally get that. The only difference is that when we did, I would crawl into basically a hole, and basically my level of communication to my partner was not good at all. I didn't understand that, and that's probably because as a child, well, I know as a child, I know between my brother and I know my father, for example, he was very verbally abusive. So basically, whenever we crossed paths, there was always some kind of problem. And so basically, rather than talking to me at a normal level, he would yell at us, for example, you know, and never have anything decent to say, whether to be my brother or to myself. And I think that's probably where that stemmed from, where, you know, one of the reasons why if I got into confrontation, I would just want to run.
So being abused as a young boy, being abused, getting verbal abuse from your father, how did that compound and affect your relationship with your wife and your family? Those experiences.
It affected greatly because, like I say, like if I had a disagreement, I basically, well, some things I could deal with exponentially, but some things, depending on the level of what was going on, I couldn't. I just could not. I would run away basically, and I mean it's funny because even within the relationship, like you're asking me with my wife, that's the way it's been through everything else I've done in my life. I mean, other than my job. I mean, I shouldn't say. I've even had a couple of jobs where I just gone. As soon as you raise your tone of your voice at me, or I felt threatened in any way, I was out of there, because. I think it related back to my father, like I talked about, but mainly probably because of my abuse that happened to me. And I was always under the belief that, like most of this, first off, like I said this kind of when the beginning of, when we started talking, was a lot of this is false belief, okay, which I'm going to get into a little bit more, which is very, very important to where I am now. But a lot of the stuff I had or was going through was all false belief. But anyway, back to your question. Yeah, I was just scared. It's just plain and simple as that. I could not deal with any kind of like disagreement at a nasty level. I just couldn't get in there, and I couldn't deal with it. I just couldn't. I was scared as hell. And at that age, I mean, I'm in my 20s. I don't know nothing about nothing other than I grew up real fast, and I had a job, and I became a parent, and I just did what I had to do to survive or cope, as we say, right? And I really, really pretty much put that on to what happened to me, to why I behaved. I mean, I did not have good communication skills, I guess is the best way to put it. I had poor communication skills. So if I had confrontation, like I said, I would run. And even for the basic things, I just couldn't, I didn't know how to deal with it. I mean, I do now really, really, really well, and I'm really good with conflict. But I tell you, when I was in my early 20s and even in my 30s and in my 40s, I was horrible at it. I did not know how to deal with it. I would rather run than to even deal with it, because I always thought, again, it falls back to my false belief, as I was talking about. I never figured that anybody was with me or wanted to be with me. I couldn't trust anybody. So therefore, why would I want to stick around? I figured that people, if they do trust me or they want me around, they want something from me. And that's kind of it always stems back from when I was abused, from the stuff I heard from my abusers. And I do not, like I say, I do not hold on to this stuff now anymore. I choose not to. Like, I want to move forward. I want a relationship. I deserve that much. I deserve to be some kind of level of happiness, which I really never really understood or was able to discover, because I didn't know who I was. And at least I can say now I have a better understanding who I am from those experiences, from my past to where I am now. And that's all because of the Gatehouse.
Now, as a result of this marriage, you had a child.
Oh, yes.
A daughter. And again, what influence did your past have on the raising of your child? And also too, and I hope I'm not stepping on line, but you have mentioned on previous shows, your marriage ended.
Yes.
So again, those two events in your journey, the marriage ending, how much of impact did the abuse at a younger age have on the marriage ending, and what sort of effect did the abuse have on the raising of your daughter?
Well, that's a good question too as well, because when I got married and I had a child, some people may think this is odd, but I was able to pretty much put aside what happened to me as a child. Now, I described about interaction and stuff. Well, yes, I had all that stuff as well. I couldn't communicate very well, but what I did is I was able to put up a wall. I'll use that as a metaphor, or an example, I should say, to how I blocked it out. I wanted to have a family because I never thought I had a family, because I went from home to home to home, and I never felt I belonged anywhere. So here I am. I got married. I have a child. This is my dream. This is what I wanted. So I was able to pretty much put that aside. Yes, I would come to me, and from time to time, well, actually not time to time, more often than I'd like to say or think, through my nightmares and my flashbacks. But I was able to put that aside and concentrate on raising my daughter. And to me, her life was more important than mine. So that's how I was able to push that aside.
And when your marriage ended, what sort of feelings were running through you and saying, wow, did you have a moment saying, is my past ever going to break free of me?
Well, that's a good question. I always thought to myself, as I've described myself about, when you feel like you're alone, a lone wolf or a loser or wherever you might be coming, when you're down and out like I was, I felt pretty bad, I tell you, and the way my marriage ended was not good at all. I won't get into that too much right now, but because we're not talking about that, but it ended bad, and it hit me really, really, really bad. And and I think about it now. I remember talking with my cousin about this, and I was so hurt, and then I cried. I remember crying, and the way I was brought up was I wasn't supposed to cry. And I cried and I cried and I cried, and I was so hurt. And actually, all it did was send me into a big tailspin, I guess. But I still managed to keep somewhat of a, somewhat keep on wheels, basically on the road, and keep going, because I still have a daughter here, right? That's still involved. So yes, my marriage ended up, and I had to keep my chin up, and because I had my daughter every second weekend, and as it ended up, my daughter ended up coming and moving in with me, so I ended up raising my daughter too as well. So I had to forget about what happened to me, and I had to pay attention to her. And when you have children, I know anybody who has children out there or has serious responsibility like that will totally get what I'm talking about. You'll drop about whatever's going on with you, take care of that.
Nice. Did you ever shared your experiences when you were growing up with your daughter? And if you did, how challenging was it for her to hear, and how challenging was it for you to share that?
Again, that's a great question. It's funny because I only just shared with her probably about would have been about 3.5, 4 years ago, just when I came here, and I spent some time here because I was having a hard time when I came here, and I figured, well, you know what, she's a big girl. Like, she's in her 30s here now, and the time I told her, well, obviously she wasn't quite in her 30s, but she's a grown woman, very mature woman, and I thought, well, what the hell? I got nothing to lose. Well, I do have a lot to lose, but I thought she was mature enough and we were close enough, so I felt that she deserved to know what was going on with me, especially why I was coming to the gatehouse. And I thought she was mature enough to handle it, and I was right. She was mature enough to handle it, and she paid me. She gave me great support to what I was doing in regards to my own self-healing, and she's been like a rock for me, right? And that was really important for me because I really had nobody, and that was great. I was really, I am not sorry that I told her, and to this day she supports me to my decision about coming here and taking care of myself.
Okay. Just going to interject for people who are on. Thanks everyone who's on. If you have any comments, you can type them in on the side. If you have any questions for Stewart, please, there is a seat open. So do not be afraid. There's a lot of good conversation going on the side. I also have someone who's watching on the web, who's communicating with me via iPad in regards to a number of great things. And one of the things that this person has shared is that asking you if you ever feel like you can share your message with young kids. Hey, Stewart?
Yeah, I'm here. I've been trying to, I'm just looking off to the side of my screen here, seeing if there's any questions or anything anybody had. I've been kind of been focusing on what I've been saying and not really paying attention off to the side there, but I don't mean to be rude to anybody. I'm not that quite coordinated. I'm trying. I swore off multimedia for quite a long time. I'm only kind of just getting back into it, but I really appreciate everybody joining in. I just threw that comment up there now, and thank everybody for joining. But if you have any questions, don't be shy. I'm not really afraid to talk about anything. There's some things I can't talk about due for legal reasons, but I'm pretty much say anything you want to say, or rather, I'll answer pretty much anything you want to say.
Well, one of the comments I've got through my iPad here is that you have an important message, and it's something that children need to hear. So, do you get the opportunity, or have you had the opportunity to share your message with young people?
I have. I had one occasion where I went with actually one of our facilitators here, Charmaine Loverin, and she's based out of Toronto here as well, and I went to a conference that she had, and it's funny you talk about school children, because this lovely lady that I'm talking about is trying to get this. Well, child abuse is still a very, very taboo subject, and in the school systems, I know in Ontario here anyway, I can't speak about the other provinces, but I know in Ontario, it's not part of their curriculum. I mean, maybe it is now with the new sex ed that they have coming out, where they'll talk about it, but as far as awareness and feeling safe to talk about it, where it's just not there, not that I'm aware of anyway from this point. But maybe that'll change when the new sex ed comes in, which is supposed to be this year. I don't know to what level they're going to talk about it, but yes, I have been around children where this topic's come up, and I think they're curious, but I don't think they totally understand. And I totally get that, and that they don't understand, or at least they don't want to understand, or there's a whole lot of confusion there. Excuse me. And I think this is where the schools will come in hand to teach them about awareness, and make them or try to get them to understand that this is not appropriate, and this sort of behavior is not welcome at all, and they should be aware that it's not good stuff. And as far as children are concerned, I think a lot of children are not really, depending on their age, really wouldn't understand, which is a good thing. Well, it's a bad thing, but a good thing, because children are supposed to be children. Children are supposed to have fun and not have to worry about sex. Well, this type of sex, they shouldn't even have to be thinking about it. They should be just too busy at being kids.
What are some of the calls to action you would have in regards to, well, let me roll back. The issue of sexually abused men, we don't hear a lot about still.
No, but it's becoming more into the it's becoming more mainstream. All because of multimedia. And a lot of men will not come up and talk about it to the level that I am right here, right now. And I totally get that, because there's still a lot of stigma, depending on what country you're in. Canada, well, US, UK, for example. I know I talked to a lot of men through multimedia about sexual abuse in the UK, for example, and it's still very taboo there. And again, that's another topic all in itself, to how they deal with it over there. But I know that a lot of people, I've had some comments from time to time telling me they think that I'm very brave to do what I'm doing. And well, maybe I am. I really don't look at it whether I'm brave or not brave. I just look at it, this is a social problem that I can't take anymore. Somebody has to do something. And as far as I'm concerned, I've got nothing to lose. I've already lost it all as far as moralities are concerned, and so-called virtual values, and that's all gone out the window. I mean, I lost that years ago when my abuse started happening to me, and and it's stuff that I've just thrown away because I didn't know any better, because of my false belief that I basically put upon myself from what happened to me. So really, I got nothing to lose by talking about this at whatsoever to the level that I have. And furthermore, the more I talk about it, and the more maybe more men will come forward about this and talk about it, because they don't have to feel like they have to live in a shell anymore. I don't live in a shell anymore, and neither should my neighbor if he's been through it as well. I deserve a good quality of life as the next person. And furthermore, no one should have to go through this, whether you're a man or a woman. And by me coming forward and talking about the level that I have and will continue to do, by being a male, to me, I'm hoping that it'll give other men hope and courage to come forward, even if they don't do it to the level that I am. Here I am right now on Blab with Dr. Vibe. You don't have to do to the level that I have, but to give you hope to come out here and go talk to somebody to let you know that you're not a piece of crap. You are you are a human being, and you're worthwhile. You're worth being here, and you're not a piece of crap, and you deserve a better quality of life. not only for the people around you, and you deserve much better, but I'm here to tell you that you're worth it. I'm here to tell myself that. I believe that, and I'll tell any man out there that you're worth it as well. And I'll do whatever it takes. And I really have no qualms with talking about it. Of course, I have respect for others, but you know what? On this level, hey, I'm here, and I'll do whatever it takes so people are aware. Hopefully, that they'll get hope.
Excellent. Well, we're waiting for a gentleman named Bill Harbeck to join us, hopefully. Oh, I think we've got him. Bill? Can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Hey, Bill.
Yes, we can. Hey, Bill, thanks very much for stopping by. I hope you're enjoying the conversation.
I am. I've been intrigued.
Pardon me?
I've been on about 25 minutes. I'm very intrigued.
Okay. What would you like to share with the program?
Well, I've hosted a nonprofit for about 9 years. I'm a survivor myself. Ended up on the Oprah show a few years ago.
Wow, congratulations.
Was dealing with the issue and have fought the battle for quite a few years. I really appreciate your guest saying how difficult it is to get this out into the public arena, because I've just run into roadblock after roadblock of people just not wanting to hear about it. It's just too dark, too painful. Don't want to hear about it. Leave it out. So I applaud your courage for doing that.
Thank you so much. What how can I put it? Well, for both of you,
Mm-hmm.
when men approach you saying they've gone through this experience, what do you tell them?
Sorry, say that again?
So when men approach you who have gone through this experience, what do you tell them to encourage them? Because obviously you're a light in a dark place for them, because each of you have been speaking and sharing about it, and they come to you, share their story. What do you share with them to encourage them to stand strong as much as they possibly can?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, basically, it wasn't an easy journey to begin with. I've been struggling to change my perception about myself for many years now. So when I talk to men and women too, if I may add as well, because I facilitate both genders, but I always encourage men and women both. I always try to instill hope. Okay, if I feel like when I came here, I was a rat in an alley someplace. I felt like I was a piece of crap. I didn't feel I had no self-worth whatsoever. Well, if I can go from there to here I am now talking about it, and saying that I'm carrying no more shame, then that's kind of what I try to put out to other men and women, that try to instill some kind of hope that yes, that happened to you, and I acknowledge that, like I acknowledge that what happened to myself and to other survivors as well. But I refuse, and I try to encourage others that by holding on to this stuff, well, you know what? If I hold on to this, I'm going to stay in the sewer. So if I can change that thought perception with myself, and most of it was bad thoughts, or rather false perception, then I can move forward and still acknowledge this happened to me. I'll never get rid of this what happened to me. This will be with me the rest of my life. I don't care how many times you give me shock treatment, how many pills you give me. I'll always have this in the back of my head. I'll never forget it as long as I live. But this is the key thing here, is that I don't have to let it basically run my life. And that's basically what I did for for most of my life. And now I choose not to do that. I choose, to move forward. And that's what I'm doing. I mean, hey, I'm not cured. I'm not, I have no Band-Aid solution, but I'm here. I'm talking about it. And by doing so, my abusers don't win. I'm winning by coming here and talking about it to the point where I can say that I have no more shame.
Bill?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have a 5-step. The name of our nonprofit is actually called Holding On to Hope. And when I meet men for the first time, first thing I do is say, hey, you got to tell your story. You've got to put it out there. If you're going to keep this in, if you're going to keep it silent, then you'll make no progress whatsoever. So the first thing is you got to acknowledge that you were a survivor. The second thing is you got to tell the story. the third thing is you really got to mourn what you've lost, because you've lost a lot. Depending on your age, if you haven't come forward for 15, 20, 35 years, you've lost a whole lifetime of interaction with people and relationships that could have been good or better, and it's gone. And so you've got to mourn what you've lost, but then you've got to transform your thinking. That's the fourth step. Transform the thoughts, and you've mentioned it very clearly there. You don't feel like you've got any value. And it's not true. And you need to change that, but it sounds easy. You say, oh, yeah.
Not easy.
Yeah. Try 20 years worth of working at that before you actually get there. And then lastly, you move toward forgiveness. A lot of people say, well, you got to forgive them. Well, yeah, right. That might be easy for you to say, but I've got to travel a pretty long road of healing before I'm going to get to the forgiveness part. But when you do get there, it's absolute freedom, because that shame that you're talking about is excruciating, and it envelops it, it holds it, it grasps who you are and determines your well-being. And so I encourage guys when they meet me, hey, have you told your story to anybody you trust? That's the first thing you got to do. And once that starts to flow out, once you get that out the first time, it starts to become easier and easier. And then you discover, hey, I'm not the only one. There's thousands of guys out there that this has happened to. And the more we stay silent, the less chance they're going to have to enjoy what we've enjoyed in terms of healing.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna just share some comments from a very special friend through my iPad, and they're saying yes, and forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. She works with victims, and she says, I tell my victims forgiveness means letting go of the pain, anger, and shame. It is not about saying I forgive you to the offender. It's about acknowledging that there was nothing they could do to prevent the violence, that they are blameless in their victimization. I agree. The forgiveness is not the rapist. It is for the victim.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's yeah. I love the way that's said. You know, I really struggle with forgiveness. And I'm not even talking about towards my perpetrators. I'm talking about towards myself. And I know that when I thought about it long and hard, I mean, and I know that when we have this topic here, when we have this conversation at the Gatehouse and group, is always a great topic. Forgiveness. You know, I thought about it long and hard for myself, and I really struggled with that. And then I finally figured out to myself that, you know what, I really have nothing to forgive for. I mean, I've done nothing wrong. I was a child. And I know that for my healing, that's what I put to myself. And that helped me. Once I let that go, I was basically, that was basically my path. That's when I started moving forward.
Wonderful. Bill, anything else you want to add? And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some evaluated experience and evaluated knowledge. And I'm going to put it up. You always have a home here. And if you want, I'd love to have you come on the show and talk specifically about your organization.
Oh, I'd love to.
If you have some time, I can follow you on Twitter, and I can send you a message, and would love to have you share about your great organization that I know is doing wonderful work.
No, I appreciate it. I'd love to do that.
Excellent. Is this an issue, the sexually abused men? Is it, how can I put it this way? Is it a bigger issue now than when both of you experienced it? And I mean the number of events that are happening around this issue. Do you know?
No, I think the silence that's cloaked around it gives the perception that there isn't a problem.
Right.
And the fact that the culture just doesn't want to talk about it, everyone assumes it's not there. I think it's as prevalent as it ever was. I think it's as pervasive. I think it's just become covered more, the ability to hide in the shadows and not be able, for both perpetrators and survivors, they're pretty good at it. So I think the issue is as prevalent as it ever was. I think the awareness has begun to develop in the media in some places, whether it's movies or sensational events that bring it to the front. But I still think the awareness piece is critical if we're going to make any great strides in getting out there to do the healing piece.
Stewart, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I really agree with Bill on this one because, like even what I do, and I talk about it all the time, but there's still an awful lot of work to be done out there. And there's a lot of stigma attached to this still. And this is where people like myself and you and Bill, for example, and many others, whether through Blab or social media, and Bill, and I heard you mention about the Oprah show. That's fine. I know it's a couple of people from the house were on that show as well. I don't know if you remember as well, but just by people like that, like even with the Oprah show, the more we do this, the more awareness we create, and hopefully within time, this is going to start changing. And the more we, I hate to say, beat on people's heads about this nasty topic, it's going to change. And I firmly believe, I know just from people coming to the house here now, that awareness is at a greater level than it ever has been. And more people are talking about it. It still has a long way to go, but at least the momentum is there. If I shouldn't say the momentum is there, but at least it started. And more people are talking about it. And I know through media here in Canada, for example, I hear about it every day. There's not a day goes by that I don't hear about it, of something somewhere. And, that's really, really sad. But the more this is talked about, you can't ignore it. I mean, people are fed up. And most people I talk to, enough's enough. Change has to happen. I know it's not going to happen overnight. Tomorrow, it's not even going to change this year. And we're coming into a new year. But the more we talk about it, like people like Bill, for example, and myself, it's going to change. It's just going to take time.
That's right.
So as we wind down. Okay, you're still here. He's going to come back in a minute. So, Bill, let me ask then, what are some messages or some calls to action that can be told to adults specifically in regards to this issue?
I would point out, especially to parents, that they raise their awareness levels, and it's become a culture where you have to be overly intentional about watching your kids, making sure that they aren't put into situations where abuse can take place. And unfortunately, you can't trust anybody these days. And so you need to develop strategies of never finding ways to leave those kids alone, never putting them in positions where they might be endangered by somebody they don't know. That's the most important part. The other, I would say, is just talk to your kids. Tell them early on, look, this is appropriate and this is inappropriate. And if it ever happens, please tell me, because I'm here to help you. If a kid knows that somebody they trust is going to be there and not judge them or scold them or whatever, they will have a greater chance that they would actually speak out. And if they speak out when they're young, there's a chance for them to not have to go through the horrible stuff that survivors do. Because the earlier you catch this, the better.
Wonderful. The question I gave or put out there, Stewart, was what sort of calls to actions or what messages would you have to adults or parents when it comes to the sexual abuse, especially of young boys? What messages would you want to give them? And Bill has put in his take. Do you have anything additional you want to share? Because then we have a question that I'll ask both of you.
Well, again, it all falls back to awareness. I mean, I know that when I was raising my daughter, I always had that fear. I mean, here I am, I'm raising a child, and I'm thinking, I often thought, well, what if this happens to her? How am I going to deal with this? What am I going to tell her? And, now it's obviously different because, as I've stated earlier, I did tell her, but it was only when I started coming here, and she was able to give me empathy, and she gave me total support. But if I had boys, that'd be really, really hard. I know that I would probably go out of my way to make sure they're educated in regards to, like, for example, like appropriate touching, for example, like, what's a good hug, what's a bad hug. I'd probably be probably a parent's worst nightmare trying to teach my children, beware of this, beware of that. But I don't know. That's a loaded question to me, for sure. That's for sure.
Well, there's a question here from a Preach as Kid. And the question is, do you find that there is greater resilience among younger or older men who have been abused?
Resilience in the idea of healing, absolutely, with much younger, for the simple reason that they haven't developed patterns of behavior to protect themselves. Older guys have developed these long strategies that you're not going to get near me, you're not going to get close to me, I don't trust you, I'm going to keep a distance. Younger guys haven't quite developed that yet. So if you can encourage them to tell the story up front when they're younger, I've found there's a much better chance that you'll see the healing begin. For the older guys, it is just, most of the men I work with are between 50 and 65. Those are the ones that come.
I just want to interject, Bill. How is it working with them? That must be challenging.
It's absolutely time consuming because it isn't done in a systematic approach of, here, I give you this, go try this and you'll get better. It's you and me going to Starbucks and chipping away just a little bit at a time for a long period of time until they get to the point where they actually trust enough that they can share the story. So with the older guys, it's an inordinate amount of time and more time to just get them to get a sense of trust. So I would say if you can get the younger guys, they're the ones to hopefully contact with if you can.
Stewart, anything you want to add to the?
Yeah, I would agree with Bill totally, because in my experience in facilitating, I have quite a wide range of people, younger people that have been, actually young to old. So basically anything from 18, anybody from 18 to in their 60s, I've had the pleasure of coming across and dealing with this. And I really agree with what you're saying, Bill, because the younger people I've noticed seem to, well, I don't know, they seem to adjust a lot quicker than us older people do. I don't like that, no disrespect, but I know I was very hardwired, and I had to do an awful lot of soul searching, and to change my false thoughts, I had to do really a lot of hard work. And Bill, you're so right. I had to beat it and beat it and beat it and beat it until I believed in myself that yes, what I'm believing about myself is totally false, and I can move forward. By doing so, that helped me, but I had to work really hard for that. And it's from carrying all those years of carrying this that made it so hard.
Mm-hmm.
It just reminds me of a term I use a lot of the times, that there's a lot of men out there that are screaming and nothing's coming out.
Oh, yeah, I can relate to that.
And I'm sure that both of you have encountered a lot of men who are in that situation, past and present, and will continue to encounter them in the future.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
It's coming out a whole lot of different ways too.
Yes.
Well, and a lot of them not good either.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, and
exactly.
Because one of the facts that I shared on a program a little while back, that people may not realize this, but 80% of the suicides committed by people over 40 are by men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I work with men coming out of prison, and to date, the 60 that I've worked very closely with, every single one was abused as a boy.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of makes reference to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's overwhelming. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Bill, because I myself work with some people, coming out of incarceration from time to time, and it's the same story I get as well. And I know statistically here in Canada, I know I don't know I don't have them right here in front of me, but I remember looking at it before. They're really high as people incarcerated that they were abused, and that was their way of dealing with it, by doing crime and then getting thrown in, and just not good all around. It's horrible.
Wow.
I'm still trying to get through what Bill just shared a few moments ago. That is because not only I'm thinking about what you shared with me numbers-wise, Bill, but multiply that by all the men that are in North America.
Yes.
And all those, and how many of them probably are not being given the attention that you're giving these men.
Right. None of them have, and of those, only one or two had told their story prior to sitting down and sharing with me. So there's so much work to be done. It's sometimes you feel pretty frustrated.
Wow. Actually, my very special friend is sending me some very information that saying Stewart is like most of us who wasn't given resilience. That's why the struggle to overcome the death of a child's soul. Curious, 42 years old, usually the age of criminality drops, either by death or by success.
Wow, that's pretty profound.
So, and ironically, 42 is one of my all-time favorite numbers.
Of course.
So, no, that, gentlemen, I just fantastic information. Anything else you'd like to share about this subject? Because it's at so much a greater level that I expected, and both of you just hit it out of the park. Any other things you'd like to share during the conversation before we wind down?
Go ahead, Bill.
Boy, I just hope people that might see or hear would maybe get a little different desire to be able to share and speak out, or invite somebody into their community, or they're right there in your neighborhood. They're everywhere. They're all around you, and yet the silence is so strong in keeping it quiet that you don't know. And so you just got to provide the opportunity. It sounds crazy, but the more you can step out and say, hey, I work with these people. What do you think? They talk about sexual abuse. It's amazing how the doors begin to open up.
Wow. Stewart, any final thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Well, like, this has really been I won't say interesting, but it's been really, a different journey. I think of all the journeys I've been on, and there's no experience can describe what I've been through that brings me here today to where I am, and to what I believe in myself, to where I'm to be and to become. So I really, I guess basically, I don't know, I want things to change, and I guess I'm just gonna have to keep, putting that out there to people to pay attention, and hope that this whole sense of awareness changes. So I will probably just keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully people's minds will change, and maybe it'll be easier. I have no idea. I wish I could predict the future. I wish I had a little ball here to change, to find these things out. But I really, I'm just going to keep, I want to just keep plugging away. And I firmly believe that things will change eventually. And if I'm there to see it, well, that's fantastic. If my grandchildren are there to see it, that's even better. But hopefully in my lifetime that things will change. Hopefully awareness will be different. I know it varies from country to country, province to province, state to state. And you know what? I abuse, as far as I'm concerned, has no demographics. It's international. It's around the world. For people to come out and talk about it to the level that we are here right now, I think it's really, really great. And it takes a lot of kahunas, to say the least, to do that. And if people can get something from what Bill and I are saying right here, right now, and if it gives people courage, then to me, we're doing what we think we're doing is right, and we're bringing awareness, and it's coming out, and we're taking the blanket off, as they say. That's kind of where I'm thinking with it.
So gentlemen, before we both let you go, I want you to give a message, whether it's men who are going through this or men in general. I'd like you to leave them with a message that they can carry after they see this either live or rebroadcast. So, Bill, I'll start with you.
I think every man must grasp his value. I'm a valuable person. I don't have to take second place to anyone. What happened to me doesn't change the fact that I'm still valuable. What happened to me doesn't change who I am. I am still that person, and I must begin to grasp the value that I have and the things that I can contribute to this world in terms of kindness and goodness. And if a man can grasp that, I think he begins to move forward, because a man's whole ego is built on whether or not he has value. And if he has value, he'll begin to surge. If he feels he's worth nothing, he'll behave exactly the same way.
That is a tweetable. I'm sending that out on Twitter right now. That was that quote right there. That's a whole show in itself. So yeah, I may be asking you back. I will be asking you back for more. Stewart, any message you have for men and those who love them?
Well, first off, please be patient with us. Be patient with us, because us that have been through this, well, that's all I know is that when I came here to get start my healing, to figure out who I was, figure out that I had some self-worth, was not an easy thing to deal with, in many different levels, which I never even covered half what I would like to, maybe another time. But my message basically is that if you're able to come out, and I'm not even going to say this as well as Bill did, but I'm just going to say it, but if you're able to come out and talk about it to the level like Bill and I are doing right here, right now, then that is the beginning of your battle being won, as far as I'm concerned. Because I can sit here and I have no qualms with saying that I have no shame and I have no guilt anymore, but just having that initial, that fight to even talk about it was not easy at all. And for me to sit here this freely, and I'm not even breaking a sweat. I'm talking like there's nothing. It's like I am so grateful that I'm able to sit here and talk about it. And I'm really hoping that any men out there listening that have never ever come across, that have never talked to anybody about this, well, I really encourage you that if you go out and you find something that you trust, that you can talk about this. And I'm telling you, I know the first time that I talked about this, well, just picture, I don't know if you've ever done any backpacking, or if you've ever done it, we're in the military or anything like that. If you were backpacking and you're carrying, let's say, 100 pounds of weight on your back, well, if you did that 10-kilometer run or that 10-mile run and you felt really weighted down, when you tell your story like I did, that knapsack comes off, and I've never felt so good. I've never, it's so hard to describe how good I felt when I said my story the first time. And that was my first sense of freedom of carrying this stuff around that I've carried around for 40+ odd years. So there is freedom out there. You just got to find the right person to talk about it. And again, I thank you so much, Dr. Vibe. And Bill, I just befriended you there on Twitter. I'm certainly going to follow you. And thank you for your wisdom. You're a guru to me.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
I'll do the same. Thank you. Thank you for your courage.
So, gentlemen, before we let everyone go, if you want to put your contact information, people can see it on the screen, but if you want to type it in the side comment section, either website, Twitter, or etc., I'll give you a few moments to do that as I close down the show. So that's up to you guys. It's Dr. Vibe here. I'm host of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. I'm also a certified men's empowerment coach. You can also catch a number of shows that I do on Blab. And I'll give the roll call quickly. 9 p.m. most Sunday evenings, I host a Black Men's Roundtable where they give comments on current events and news story. Most Monday nights, I host a show for Black women. And on Tuesday nights at 8:30, I host a manhood show. And we've been doing this show. First, it started via podcast, and now we've brought it to blog. We've been hosting it for most of the year. And I think our next show, next Tuesday, we're going to have basically a open mic. Basically, ask us any questions about manhood, or we just have a general manhood discussion as it's a year end coming up. And then on top of that, I just do wonderful conversations with incredible, epic gentlemen like the gentlemen that are on this show today. And I really don't take it for granted. And it is such a huge blessing to have gentlemen like these who are overcomers, who are still battling, who not only are battling sometimes themselves, but they're helping other men with their battles. And that's what one of the things that manhood is really about. We drag our men along when they want their help. And these men are great examples of it. So as always, catch me when you can on the show. If you have any topics that you'd like discussed on the show, my Twitter handle is there. I'll give you my email address right here. I'm already speaking that Bill is going to be on the show because I definitely want to find out about his organization. And there are other gentlemen already in my mind that I would like to connect him with that are doing the same outstanding and epic work. So that's what I'm all about. On my business card, the first thing that it says is connector, not online host. I'm a connector. So as always, I'd like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and your solution for someone's problem. I will stop the recording, but gentlemen, stay on. Goodbye, everybody, and we'll chat soon. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I have hosted and produced over 2,000 epic conversations over the last 10 years. And what makes our conversations epic? We don't do interviews. We do conversations.